decided not to take a break until right before the break was up. Right, oh, is that what it is? Find your seat, everybody. Come on.
Are we sitting together?
We've got some beautiful and handsome people taking the stage and some that seem a little shifty, but that's all right. Come on. Now, before we start this panel discussion, up the hold men up there. Senior and junior, come on in. I want to give, do you mind if I give away a little prize pack real quick?
Please go ahead.
Okay, now you cannot be a huge, this is going to be a guess, all right, because we're going to guess, but you can't be a Florida State person, and I'm assuming all of us are over here, right? You're all clumping together. Yeah, the Seminoles are hanging together. All right, so here's a trivia question to win the bag of goodness. How many national football championships have the Florida State Seminoles won whilst President Thrasher has been in office? Raise your hand. Okay, this lady here, right here. First of all, what is your name, ma'am? Diana, where are you from?
Garland.
Garland, Texas. So you have no connection to Florida State. Okay, and what insurance company are you with? K&S in Rockwall. Okay, but you're in Garland. Okay, sure you do. Okay, so how many championships have they won since Thrasher? Oh, you're going to say 0. Well, you got to leave now because you're wrong. That's wrong. Okay, all right. Who else? Raise your hand. Oh, this man over. Hold on. I saw his hand first. Sorry. Hold on, Dr. Hold. Hold on. Yes, right back here. What is your name, sir? Philip, where are you from?
Norman, Oklahoma.
Norman, Oklahoma. There's some Sooners up in there, isn't there? Okay. Easy. All right. So how many? One! He takes home the prize pack right here. Philip knows that only, now they've won more than that, so Florida State, don't get all uppity. We've won more than that, but only one since President. Oh, you don't want to open up the prize pack yet? No, don't. Save it, save it. All right, so I'm here for you if you need me, Dr. Holt.
Yes,
I'm
ma'am.
here. I'm the pretty one with the big hair.
Thank you, Hattie. Thank you. Well, good morning again. We're ready to proceed with our panel, and really we have 3 panels. Really, we have a panel of individuals that are the fathers. I happen to be all fathers today. The parents. We have the quote children, the sons and daughters, and we have one casualty today. And William will mention that. But we'll soldier on. He's a great individual. So we have the parents, we have the children, and we have each of you, because we want you to ask questions. We want you to know what's going on. So working with me, as if you will, a co-moderator, is my son William. Many of you have met William. As you're aware, we at the National Alliance are also going through a transition, and it's a 2-year transition period, and we're way past the first year. So William has been the Chief Executive Officer, the CEO of the National Alliance, now for over a year. And next August, he will assume the role of President. And I'm still wondering around what I'm going to do. But I'll be doing something, unless I do some tragic error and get bounced out. That's one of the questions you might want to ask me. So we're really, part of this panel, too. So you can feel free to ask William questions, me questions. So we really have 4 groups that are going through transition that involve family. So I'm going to introduce the parents panel. William will introduce the sons and daughters panel. I'm going to tend to focus my efforts, if you will, with the parents, and William, of course, with the sons and daughters.
And we're going to do this quickly, right?
Right now. No, we are. We want everybody to know the ground rules. That's one of our interesting relationships. He says I take a little too long getting into things.
And can I just say one thing
Yes,
before
sir.
we get started? So I do like to introduce myself, those that were in Mark Gaskamp's camp, as if you know my father and like him, yes, I am his son. But however, if you don't feel that same way, I do take after my mother quite a bit. So I just want to lay that out in full disclosure.
So you can ask, again, we can ask us questions. The panelists can ask each other questions. But most importantly, again, as I say, we want you to ask questions. We have Betty. Betty Duff is out. Where's Betty? She has a microphone back there for questions. She's back in the room. And we have Bob Rogers, as you know, our famous Alpo man, a distinguished faculty member. So Bob will have a microphone also. There are no unfair questions, no unfair subjects, as long as they pertain, to our business. We're trying to deal with the real-life issues and the solutions to transitions. There's a lot of people in this room that are going through transitions, thinking about going through them. How do they work? What pitfalls can we avoid? And most importantly, what can we learn from each other? So one thing I'm asking you all to do is when we walk out of here at 11 o'clock, you walk out those doors, please do not say, I wish somebody would have asked, or I wish somebody would have said. That is your responsibility. The floor is open to ask questions. Please ask the questions that you think are important, and don't go out of here, not knowing or feeling, well, we should have had something else. Okay, beginning with our panel, very, very briefly, in basically alphabetical order, Don Bowles. See Don there? Don has been involved with the National Alliance for a long time, for many, many years. He's a vice chairman and partner for McCreary, Henry, Bowles, and Troy, which is now a Marsh McLennan agency. Been very active with the Big Eye of Texas and Big Eye of Dallas. Don was on our board of governors for Society of CIC. He was chairman of the board of governors. He's gotten several awards from the state and the Dallas Association. And he has been a real, and he also has taught at the Agency Management Institute for us. Don had to suffer through me being his major professor when he got his MBA, and in spite of that, he's been relatively successful. So, Don Bowles. Don, thank you for being here. Michael Bosworth, another gentleman who's been in our industry a long time in Texas, the Bosworth Associates. It's a family insurance firm in East Texas. Actually, the agency was founded by his dad, and he came with his dad, and now his daughter is coming in with him. Again, very active in the state of Texas, a real leader. And in 1990, he received the Young Agent of the Year Award for the state of Texas, a graduate of Texas Tech University. Mr. Ralph Bornmann. Ralph has been a CIC for now 40 years. His agencies are along the East Coast in the Pennsylvania, Maryland area. He's been an independent agent since 1962. He began his agency in 1969. He is very active with Erie Insurance on their board of directors, the chairman of their strategy committee, and on their executive committee. Ralph is a graduate of Muhlenberg College, where he received their Distinguished Alumni Award in 2010, which very few people do that. Ralph, thank you for being here. And Mr. Ron Peterson. Ron Peterson is an agent. If you look around, you see the big building not too far from here with his name on it and his agency's name. He began in 1973 with Safeco. He went into the agency business in 1977, and in 1983 started his own agency, Patterson and Associates. Again, another individual very active in the Dallas business community, and we're very proud to have him with us. So those are our four distinguished owners, been in the business a long time. And William?
All right. So now it's my privilege to introduce our sons and daughters panel, if you will. First, we have Mr. Brad Bornmann, who is Ralph's son. And Brad had an amazing bio. It's something that I think I've felt personally, but never had the guts to actually put on paper. Brad is the president and owner of Brody Bornmann, but he says, the next paragraph says, from a young age, Brad has had to overcome great strife, tragedy, and personal hardship by being the second son of Ralph Bornmann. And I just thought that was amazing to put in your actual bio. Brad then goes on and talks about how he has grown the agency tremendously from taking it over from his father and everything along those lines. So Brad, thank you for being here. Next, we have the lovely Miss Cambridge Bosworth. So Cambridge joined her father in 2018, so just recently as a producer. She was on the carrier side before that, and she has earned a master's degree and undergraduate from Texas A&M University. And then, unfortunately, Ryan Bowles had suffered some devastation due to the tornado. He is okay, his family's okay, but he is in the process of recovering his home. They're still without power and also helping his neighbors. So unfortunately, he could not be here today. And then finally, we have Mr. Ben Patterson, who began his insurance career in 1996. He has now succeeded his father in taking over and is the president of Patterson and Associates since 2011. Ben has had a number of roles within the Big Eye of Dallas, as well as been named a best practices agency since 2013 and continues to be that. So thank you all very much for being here today. We appreciate it.
Thank you all. Thank you. Okay, we're going to begin with some questions that we have talked about earlier. Anytime you have a question you want to add to it or go into a little deeper, we have the microphones here for it. Betty is over there, and again, Bob is over there. I'm going to address this first question to Ralph, and the question is why did you select Brad to succeed you, and why do you think that has been the best choice?
Want me to answer that?
Yeah, well, give it a shot.
First of all, I didn't select him. He selected me. That's not true. Brad was the obvious choice. I come from a unique situation because I have a partner that I still have, who was in the life insurance end of the business. Brad came into us from the University of Richmond, and as most people that graduate from any university today, their minds are twisted. And now, I'm not a politically correct person, so you might as well get to know that right away. I'm also the oldest person in this building, guaranteed. Even I'm older than him. But he came into the agency, and we did the thing that everyone does. You send the child to school, you work with them, you have them work with different organizations in prepping them for a career in this business. He took to that very easily. Brad has a personality that is different than mine, thank God. His management style is a little different than mine. Some of it good, some of it, in my opinion, not as good. But no one's as good as me, so what the hell's the difference? But Brad has done a fantastic job of working his way through. He started at the bottom, at the very bottom. Now, the other side of this story is I have a partner who had a son who wasn't qualified to be in a position of ownership. Now, it's hard to get through that, so if any of you are working in that type of circumstance, you better clear it up quickly, because it's not easy. I was the bad guy that had to get rid of my partner's son because I knew that he could not be in a position, even in the insurance industry, and it's a very difficult situation. So Brad got the deal whether he wanted it or not. However, I can only emphasize, you've got to solve issues of family and partners right up front, which we did not do immediately. So I became a bad guy. I'm good with that. Some old, doesn't matter. But why did I pick Brad? Well, my other children didn't want any part of this business. I had one who's a military pilot. I had a daughter who's an audiologist, raising children, doing all those type of things, and they wanted no part of this business in the first place. But Brad did, and he's come a long way. He's done a magnificent job. We sold most of the agency to him in 24. Is that right, Brad?
Yeah, 2004.
2004 seems like an eternity ago, but and he is the president of that organization. I maintained a book of business in another organization, and we had arrangements that we would not interfere with each other, although we shared company employees. I rent employees from his organization, and it's worked reasonably well. But there's complications along the way when you have partners that are not property and casualty people. My partner was a life insurance producer. They are a different breed of cat. They create death and sell a product. I, on the other hand, I can burn a building down in front of a prospect's eyes and they will buy my product. I'm good at burning down buildings, creating all kinds of turmoil in their life. And they'll say, okay, I'll do that. But they are issues that you need to address right up front. We did not do that. So we had some conflict. Having said that, that's enough.
William? Dr. Brad?
So Brad, do you agree with that?
It's pretty accurate. You know, I've been there since '86, and Ralph and Howard are, you know, they were getting up in age. Ralph was 66 when he sold. Howard was 70. It got to the point where I gave him a bullet point letter and said, look, it's now or never. I don't want to be 70 years old still paying off debt on the acquisition of an agency. And so we were able to put together a deal. I would say that where the communication was not good, I had no idea what the finances were. Ralph and the accountant said there's enough money to pay the debt. I believed them. And there was until 2008, 9, 10 when we hit some pretty sour times. Fortunately, we weren't heavily into construction, but we lost dealerships to bankruptcy. We lost construction accounts to bankruptcy. We restructured a little bit along the way, which helped. But my mindset when we bought it was, I'm a rainy day guy. I'm going to pay off as fast as possible. You hear people out there today where they're like, oh yeah, I got a 15-year note. Like 15 years is an eternity to me. I'm like, I think we paid off one note in 8 and the other in 9. So communication, I would say know what the finances look like and jump on them quick. But he's accurate. It got heated at the sale because Howard was 70 and he wanted to go more of a family trust to hold his shares, but none of his family worked in the agency. So.
Okay, William, do you have a question next, or go ahead?
So I guess my question, I will ask Cambridge. So why did you decide to work with your father?
Sure. So obviously growing up in the insurance world and being part of the agency since I was born and running around and being at the office every evening and after school and on the weekends and seeing how hard that both my mom and dad worked to build the agency, it was always a dream of mine to one day get to be a part of that. And so over the course of my college years and post-college years, that's what I've been working towards, to be the third generation now coming into the agency and continuing to build on to the legacy that's come before me. And it's truly an honor to get to be part of it now and sharing it with my dad and continuing to serve our clients and continue to grow.
Okay, let's turn to another question. And I asked Don Bowles, address this to Don. They made a decision to transition the management and the ownership of the agency to his son. And how, if at all, would you say your relationship with your son, has it changed at all since you've done this?
Yes.
That's a good beginning. And, would you elucidate how that?
Yeah, a little context maybe. By the time Ryan joined us, which was the year 2000.
Speaking
By the time Ryan joined us, which was the year 2000, the firm had substantially changed. I was actually third generation, and he was fourth. But in 1996, two firms of comparable size merged to form MHBT. And so we had at that time 9 partners, and Ryan was joining us as a junior producer with another individual who was not a family member. That was a great situation because they sort of grew up together in the commercial production business. And so, you know, our relationship, Bill, went from being father-son to mentor-mentee and then partner. So within 6 years, Ryan made partner. The firm was growing, adding skill set. We started with 9 partners, MHBT, and roughly 80 employees total, including partners. By the time Ryan became a partner, we probably were around 20. When we hooked up with Marsh in 2015, we were 45 partners, and had substantially changed the fabric of the business. We were, at that time, 40% employee benefits, 60% property casualty. And, you know, at some point in time, we may get into the reasons why we made that decision. But throughout that period of time, our relationship changed.
Would you say for the positively or negatively?
For the better, yeah.
Overall?
You know, the father-son relationship was great for time away from the office, but it really needed to be a peer relationship and then a partner-to-partner relationship. It was really important to us. And frankly, CIC and other professional development opportunities helped make that happen.
Okay, well, I'd like to address that too. Would you like to address that?
Sure.
To this?
Any comments on that, how the relationship has changed with your father over the course of the transition?
I can speak to that. When it came time to figure out how much I owed him, that was a bit of a process. It never got contentious, but I certainly understood. You talk about the biggest asset that a business owner has is the value of the business. And so the debt that you carry, that I've been carrying for 8 years now, being the picture of debt, just in case anybody wanted to know what debt looks like, it's me. But it's an honor whenever you get to transition between father and son. The attorneys that we worked with in putting this whole deal together, at the end, he hit the pause button. He goes, I just want to take time and just say this is how it should always be. And so that's the thing that I'm most proud of, between the relationship that my father and I have. And I say father because when I joined the agency in '96, from that day forward, he was always Ron. He was no longer Dad. And I understood the politics that existed even in an office of 5. And so from that day forward, he was always Ron. Maybe on holidays, I'd call him Dad. But it changed. And looking back 23 years later, you know, to have built a business together to where he built the foundation from '83 to '96. And then me to come in as a naive college graduate, having really clueless about what the business world was going to be like, and then be mentored by your father, and now to be able to buy out your father and do things along the way that honor your father. Those are things that are very, very special whenever you talk about a legacy business. And certainly something that I'm proud of, things that we've been able to accomplish together over the years.
Ron?
You have to understand from the beginning, our first office was about half the size of this stage. It was me and 1 employee. We started out on Interurban Avenue over in Richardson, Texas. We had a Radio Shack Raider with a big, The story goes on and on. I don't want to, but the most important thing is the journey, is watching the journey from the beginning and where we are now on the 16th floor of the building right across the Palisades, right across Central Expressway. It's an honor to have been a part and watch the progress over time. One of the things that's essential as an agency owner is continuity. I made a promise to my employees that were with me 34 and 32 years, that as long as I lived and breathed, I would never sell that agency, nor would they ever have to fill out a brand new application to become an employee of a new organization, acquiring entity. I fulfilled that promise to them as they have retired. And having that opportunity and continuity and the assurance of those employees knowing that they never have to face that, it's huge. Not everybody can say that. In continuity, I warn all of you, those of you who were not in the sessions yesterday with Medicare benefits, continuity planning, you need to be sure and enroll in that course, because I have seen businesses die. And I'm talking about fellow peers. I'm talking about people that should be on this panel the father died and the son had no place to go but to go work somewhere else. And you know exactly who I'm talking about, Don. I won't mention his name, but I served on the board with him. Continuity planning is everything, not only for your family. The reason my son came in the business, he's the only son I have. I chose him, but he earned his way. He started out in the file room. We had how many filing cabinets? 24 filing cabinets?
Too many.
Too many. His first priority was to get rid of all the paper, and it opened up additional space for additional CSRs and workstations. There's many projects, many of the things that we did working together and the new perspective that young blood brings into the business, it is invaluable. Because the new perspective for those of us that get dedicated and are focused on building a business, running a business, dealing with HR issues, it's everything. It helps you tremendously. Ben set the bar. As the other young talent, other young men that we brought in, number one, character, honesty, hard work, and being dedicated and focused on building and becoming a professional. And he did that. I would leave at 6:30, and he would still be there. He got his hard work out of the way. He paid his dues, gained the respect because guess what the employees are thinking? Oh, he's bringing in his son. Oh boy, what's that going to be like? Well, he proved himself. And now he's the president of the organization. He used to answer to me. Now I answer to him. And it's a privilege to do that.
Wow. Did you hear that, Dr.? It's a privilege.
It's a privilege. I seem to be working on that right now. Okay, let's turn to another area that some people do better than others. And I'm going to address this to Michael Bosworth, if I may. People talk about a written transition plan. We've known people that have very detailed transition plans, exactly what authority work they're going to do. Did you have, or do you have now, or do you have a written transition plan?
Well, let me say that Cambridge and I just started the process, so of the entire panel, we're probably behind the most because we haven't actually done the transition. She started with us a year ago, and so consequently we have not started this process. Now, I went through the process with my dad 43 years ago, so I understand the issues there, and that's what we've talked about of really what Ron was saying here. Of continuing the legacy of the agency is important to us. My dad started it in '39, and we definitely want to keep this thing going And that's part of what our intention is. But again, I was one of 5 children, and my dad kind of pushed us all away, saying, you know, go out, figure out what you want to do. Don't think you've got to come into this business. Susan and I did the same thing with our daughters, and of course, daughters are a little different than sons, so it's a little different challenge. But we said, you go figure out what y'all want to do. You know, we don't necessarily going to push you into this business. And Cambridge has done a great job of going out and understanding what the industry is and figuring it out. And I will piggyback what President Thatcher said earlier about the internship, because I think that's really where it really sparked the interest of getting her to come into the agency and start the process to figure out, is this the route, is this the career that she's going to want to do? She did an internship with Chubb in New York City during college, which really sparked it to say, wow, this is exciting, this is fun. It's different than what everybody talks about at school, and that's what got our interest going as far as what we were going to do. But so really, we are behind the 8 ball in the sense that we do not have a formal process to do the transition, but again, we're starting to just get her in, bringing her into the agency. She's already making the changes, taking the responsibility, of which, again, I did it with my dad. And again, you have to earn that respect of the staff and the customers, and Cambridge is doing that for us right now. So that's kind of where we are to start with. We don't have a, per se, written plan, but we're working on that.
Well, let me ask the other gentleman on the panel, do you, in the process of doing, did you have a written plan that laid out very specifically what people were going to do or how it was going to work? Yes, sir.
I had the great privilege of working for Safeco Insurance Company, and they had 2 men that traveled around the country, Dan Connors and John Stanford. Some of you older men, women, if you ever had the opportunity to be in their agency management seminars, best in the country. They were packed. There was standing room only in many cases, where people would come in, register late because they wanted to be a part of everything they had to say. Agency management, they talked all the time about planning for the future and not waiting till you're 60 or 70 years old to start divesting yourself or bringing in talent. They said, bring in talent while you're young, because that's the time, and the more talent you can bring in, the easier it is on the debt load that they're going to have to service. And it helps them tremendously. And we decided that the time for me to divest myself of my stock, we went through that process, but they gave us the footprint. So any agency management seminar that's put on, transition planning is extremely important. Continuity planning is a part of that. We put the life insurance in place on each partner before we ever executed the buy-sell agreement. Because guess what? I did not want my partner's his wife moving in to an office who had no knowledge of anything to do with the insurance industry and wanting to draw a paycheck. We understood that. We had that discussion up front. It was a very difficult discussion, but it was one that we both understood, that we had to do things right to plan for the transition. And stage by stage, we implemented everything that John Stanford and Dan Connors talked about in this transition.
The only thing I'd like to add is we now have a very formal perpetuation plan, one that was sprung from going through this process of buying out retirees, including my father. So I have a unique perspective at the age of 44 of what I want to do when I choose to get out of this business. And so we spent a lot of time and a lot of money with attorneys and consultants of developing. And the one thing that has a tendency to get overlooked, if you don't have a formal plan. It's the pressure that it puts on the balance sheet. If you have a majority owner that over a period of years is accumulating equity and then all of a sudden chooses to get out, it could be the death of the agency. And so it's a perspective to keep, is how to protect your balance sheet, and for there not to be so much pressure on that balance sheet that literally would force you to one option, and that is to sell externally. That's the only thing I'd like to add.
Ralph?
We did not have a written plan of any type. Yeah, I understand. I started the business, it was just me. And I was a school teacher and a football coach, taught English and history. Most football coaches do that. Not very well, might I add, but they coach football. And I had an opportunity to sell insurance part-time for an organization called the Erie Insurance Group, which I did. That's how I started in the business. I went to the Aetna School of Management and Insurance Training, which was one of the schools similar to Safeco, if you'll recall. And that's where I got most of my education relative to managing an agency. As far as the perpetuation of the agency, they didn't even teach us that then. I didn't worry about it then. All I wanted to do was work, make money, and build the agency, which I did. And a lot of what I learned about agency management, I learned right here from the Society of Certified Insurance Counselors. That's where I got a very good education on agency management. I did not have an MBA. I still don't have one. I got my own MBA, Master of I can't tell you what. But I will say this, and I've got to say this before I forget to say it. The night when they had the storms, we're driving back from the football game, and God, that was awful. And we passed this building that had a high-rise building that said Patterson Insurance. That gentleman down there and there. And I said to Brad, now those people, they've arrived. They got a building that's over the tower of this whole community. We got a one-story building that was an old supermarket. I said, you need to start working on that building. Like now. But now we're going to transition the rest of the book of business that I have, which are a lot of major accounts that I maintained because I didn't want to sell that to Brad and his partner because I didn't think that they could retain that business at that time. We've transitioned Brad into some of those accounts, most of those accounts now that I could fall over, and these people would probably continue the relationship with Brad. So we're going to move that, and I'm getting out of here.
Don?
We don't have a plan for that, but that's what's happening.
And it won't be written, that's for sure.
Bill, the honest answer is parts of our transition planning were in very detailed written form. We really looked at three areas. One, we looked at the ownership piece, which was in a very detailed written form with, from about 2000 forward, a very detailed succession planning process, which we executed. The second area we looked at was transition of client relationships, which Ralph just spoke to. And that was not in as much written form, although we identified individuals within the firm who could take first seat responsibility as the retiring shareholder took second seat. So we identified individuals, but we didn't have a detailed planning process that we went through by account to have those relationships transfer. But to our credit, virtually all have of significance so far, at least. And the third which is the most important and most difficult, is the leadership transition. So we really haven't. I mean, we've identified individuals within the firm who are now emerging president of business insurance by office, president of employee benefits by office. We have a regional president identified who is taking responsibility. So we have individuals, but we do not have a written plan to make that process happen.
You want to ask if they want a plan, or are they happy with their plan?
You can ask it.
No, you can.
Bill, can I ask a question?
Absolutely.
How many
Yeah, I was gonna
owners in this building now have a written transition plan?
I was just going to ask. You just raise your hand. It's not right.
One, two. It's not unusual. Most people, most agencies don't until they start pushing the buttons and saying, hey, we have to do something. I don't advise operating that way. If you do it in advance, you're going to be ahead of the game.
How did you all feel when having a written transition plan, or in Cambridge's situation, looking for the future? Is that something that you want?
Sure. So from what I've experienced so far, the bigger transition piece for me was more of a formal period of knowing exactly when to bring me into the agency. And as Ben was saying, it is now Michael. And so transitioning from the carrier side, so I was a commercial underwriter for one of our carriers for 2 years, and so that was been more my focus the last year or so, has been focusing on that transition and making me feel comfortable of knowing when I was ready to make that jump and when to come into the agency side of the industry, and making sure that over the course of the last year and the next few years to come, as he said, we're still early in this, making sure that I myself am comfortable with the transition, more importantly, that the clients are comfortable with the transition and see the direction that the agency is going. And a huge piece of this also is the staff. Most of the staff has been there since I was very young, and so that's been a huge part for me, is transitioning how they work with me versus how they've worked with him for so many years. And so making sure that everybody's comfortable with that transition, so that down the line, when we do get to more of these this phase of it, that the continuity does continue.
Okay, let's turn to something a little teeny bit more specific. Is what do you see as most important problems or the downside challenges to the transition? We've touched upon a little bit. When you look at the issues that you've had, what were the most important ones? We'll start with Brad.
What were the most important transition issues?
Or problems faced?
The problem.
Problems? Well, with any change of leadership, there's going to be some employees that don't buy in at all. So there were, Ralph wasn't really good at firing. He'd look at me and go, okay, you go take care of that. So I had to help some people find other jobs. But that's probably your key, is personnel, if they're going to buy in. We really didn't even tell the staff, what was it, for 2 years that we were transitioning, Ralph?
Yeah.
2 or 3 years. I mean, we didn't think it was necessary that, you upset the boat. You just keep going.
But Brad was named president of a new organization, they retained that I formed another organization, but they didn't know it. It didn't matter. We treated everything the same way.
Right, so it really wasn't like, the extent of the transition, and it wasn't, and I never saw a problem, and I don't think Ralph did, was if someone had a problem, he'd divert them to my office. Say, go, you got to talk to Brad. I'm sort of, trying to phase out. Well, that was 15 years ago he was trying to phase out. He's like, Bill,
This is what
I don't think anyone retires
This is
from
looking at
insurance.
phasing out right here.
Well, you look sort of phased out, I'll tell you that.
He won't phase out. What else are you going to do? He doesn't know. You look around and you're like, how many rounds of golf can you play? He can physically play 1.5 to 2 a week. You run out of things to do. So I'd say personnel, sort of when you're going to start the dialogue with the transition, who do you foresee not buying into the change? Or, causing problems that they're a little bit older than you and they don't think it's right.
Could I address that?
Absolutely.
One of the things we did, we announced to the agency, the transition, that I was handing over the gavel to Ben and the young management team that we had assembled. And they were all men of integrity. They were all honest and forthright. And they knew, I said, you can expect one thing. They will be fair in their dealings with you. And it's difficult. That first meeting, that was the most difficult thing of all to do that. But you know what? It was absolutely essential and important. And some of the employees would still come to me and want to talk about issues. And I said, no, wait a second. You need to go talk to Ben and the young management team. I said, they're going to take care of this. They're going to address this issue. And the greatest thing about all of this is the fact, no more HR. And let me tell you, that will lengthen your lifespan. With the brand new, we've got a new generation upcoming, and there's some challenges there, as we all know. But it made it every time since that time, it became easier and easier, and the staff quickly realized that they could rely upon the wisdom of the young management team, Ben's leadership. They knew they could count on that because he would always be fair with them. And that's what's critical.
I have one question. What would your advice be to current employees, staff, team members during a transition? What do you think are things that they can do that can really disrupt it, or things that you really saw in some of the people that you really admired during the transition that were employees or team members at your organizations? Think of it.
Make yourself invaluable to the organization.
Yes.
And I can't say that emphatically enough, to where if you want to have a long-term place as an employee coming in to a new leadership team, find ways to make yourself irreplaceable to the organization, period, paragraph. And I've watched it over my 23 years in this business. I've watched it a few times, and it's always been something that Ron and I have talked about at lunch, of how impressed I am with certain individuals that have found a way to make themselves irreplaceable.
Brad, any comments on that?
Well, we don't have turnover.
Mm-hmm.
So we have retirement, because we're a little bit in the suburbs, so it's tougher to find younger talent. We just sort of get a couple extra years out of them. That's
It's
for
like
lack
a
of
tire,
better,
right?
lack of
A
better
tire,
term.
sort of,
But even over the last 15 years, we've probably retired 6 people and hired 8.
Mm-hmm.
It's just consistency. So.
Okay, let's turn to another question. Does anybody in the audience have a question at all that you're going through? Yes, sir, the gentleman in the blue shirt.
Do you think you should have gone back in the 2 years? Do you looking back, do you think you should have addressed the buyout before the transition with your staff? Or do you think if things were today, you'd do the same stuff?
No, I don't think I'd have changed anything. There was no disruption. Ralph would, he always had a place at the shore, and he would, sort of go down Thursday nights and come back Mondays. So people knew that the transition was coming. The controller, she just knew to come over to me, and she's retiring at the end of this year. So again, it was always, it was not probably well communicated, but everyone knew which way to go. It was never, it did not create issues. I mean, it was like a family. You're going to have debates about things, but Brad and his brother and my daughter, we were like buddies. So it didn't matter. Everything just kept going in the same direction. They knew what Brad's position was, and they knew that, I was fading away. Old insurance men, they don't die, they just fade away. And they knew that, and they still know it. But it's hard to explain this because this is not a normally structured business. It operates very well, and it's grown. What do we have, 50 employees, Brad? Something like that. We had 60 at one time, and we reduced that down when Brad took over. And he'll work his way down to about 10. but 9 when you say goodbye.
But it's a different structure that has been highly successful. And it's he's it.
I mean, our agency's always been like family first. If you've got things going on and you got to get your kids to something, well, I've always trusted them to come in a little bit later, get their work done, maybe skip lunch or stay in the office till 6. I think if there's always people in and out of the office. But if your kid has band or Halloween party, we'll go to the Halloween party. We'll still be here. Snow days, come in when you feel safe. Not just get up, go, I got to get to work. Well, I don't know if we've ever had an employee say they wrecked their car on their way to work. Can you remember any?
None.
No, except Howard. That was his partner.
He wrecked 10 of them.
Yeah, he wrecks cars. But it's always been family first, no matter, when we were 60 employees or 50, and we have 4 locations, some will be around. I think, that's, if you have that mindset with your employees and your family, things are good.
You've got to have the right people to accept that also. But they all bought into that.
Did you have a question in the jury? Okay. Yes, sir.
When you're old, you fade away, and you all been fortunate enough to have somebody within the family that you felt could take on the leadership and keep your employees very happy. If that hadn't worked, what is your opinion about, as opposed to selling it to an outside party, what is your opinion about the employees buying your agency if you have a good team?
Yeah, anybody. Ron?
I think it's, as an agency owner, you build a business over time. Then you've got to find a way to exit the business and get the return on the investment, the sweat equity that you put in all the years. And you raise a very good question, because if you don't have young producers that are capable of producing the business, generate the revenue to buy you out, then you've got to look for another opportunity. And I think one of the greatest things in the whole wide world, if you've got people capable in your organization that can do that and have the funds or the ability to go get financing to do that, that's a way of continuing the legacy. And what you're doing, think about it for a minute. How many of you have employees that have been with you over 25 years, 30 years? What's the greatest thing you can do for them is to give them an opportunity to do exactly what you've asked that question about. Find a way. Now, some agency owners, they want all their cash up front. Well, you know what? The greatest thing you can do is stick around and help retain the customers that you have served all your life, and you have dedicated yourself to helping them and being there. Because, you know, when you stick around, the retention level goes way up with retaining those customers. So there's many benefits to doing this, whether it be a son or a daughter, whether it be agency employees that have been with you and helped you build that organization over time. Give them that opportunity, because there's many that have done exactly what you've asked that question about.
Any other questions from? Yes, sir.
You brought up the issue of young producers, earning their way and buying business and having the ability to do that. So, growing organically, I'm not really going down the acquisition route, but if when you looked at acquiring talent within your agency over the years, and anybody really can answer this up there, but what are some things that you took away from the scenario of teaching young producers how to spell insurance and get going to those that had experience in bringing them into your firm and integrating them? Did you have success one way or the other? Would you recommend anything that just stands out in your mind?
Let me talk just a little bit. Bringing Cambridge in is a great example, and we've done that over the years. I've brought in young producers to try and bring them into the agency, teach them about the way we do things. But more importantly, what I think has really helped us has been when she came in, she brings in these new ideas, and I think Ron talked about it earlier. The new ideas that we're seeing as a result of these people and giving them the authority and the responsibility to bring in these ideas and change and meet the needs of these new clients that we've never touched. That's probably one of the most exciting things that we're seeing today is the new influx of clients that are coming into the agency as a result of our new producers, our new staff, our younger staff. And again, our philosophy in the agency has been as far as the staff, and we're like, they were talking about our employees, we don't have much turnover. They retire. So what do? We go back out and we get the younger ones and we bring them in at the very bottom and we train them all the way up. Probably 99% of our employees are not previous with experience, but we brought them in and we trained them our way. And as a result, their tenure there is much greater than if we bring in people who have experience. Same way with producers. If we can bring them in here and we can teach them how the culture of the agency is, we can see that's going to make a bigger effect on the agency overall. And as a result, I think some of the things that we're missing here is the importance in these transition. Because again, I did it with my dad, but the transition is so important, not only to the staff, but to the customers. And that's a huge hurdle that you've got to get the respect of that client to stay with the agency as you bring in this new talent. It's kind of funny, in the past probably 8 to 10 years, I've had more people, and at first I was kind of insulted. They said, what's going to happen if you're not here? And I'm like, wait a minute, what do you mean if I'm not here? I'm not going anywhere. Well, the reality is I am going somewhere, like Ralph says. We're going to fade out of this deal. But as you bring in these younger people and they start taking over, those questions go away, which says to us the stability factor is increasing greatly because we've brought in these younger people, and these clients are more comfortable with the way the management's going. The staff is comfortable. So that's been one of our philosophies.
Let me just add one thing, and that is that we're selling both ways. We're selling to clients, but we're also selling to our manufacturers, the insurance carriers we represent. And seeing that succession planning has been really critical to the relationships that we've been able to build. Cambridge, having had 2 years of work with a regional carrier in underwriting, there's just no substitute for that. And cementing those relationships is absolutely critical.
Can I also address one additional thing? I worked out of a claims office in Oklahoma City. I saw firsthand how the insurance industry works and how they meet the needs of those that go through tragedy. And of course, up in Oklahoma, that's Tornado Alley, and it occurred frequently every year. But the story behind that, you've got ample opportunity with all your companies. Travelers, they used to bring over, we would send our people over to Travelers so they could be with the claims adjusters, the ones that deal with fires, the ones that deal with fatality losses, especially kids or children, so they could see the inside of how that works with those specialized people that deal with customers that have those tragedies that occur. In addition to that, Travelers used to bring their claims people over to us so we could talk about how we, as an independent agent, differ from your direct writers. And I would take a poll every time they would come over. I say, how many of you have your insurance with an independent agent? And they were to learn about what we were. Independent agents are the greatest thing in the whole wide world. And I'm speaking to our interns when I say this. It's the greatest opportunity that you have. You can sell commercial, you can sell personal lines, you can sell benefits, you can sell life insurance, and the list goes on and on and on. No direct writer out there can stand up to us. Don, you talked about your benefits being 40% of your revenue. Well, we're right behind you, and we're coming up because that's what we're building. That's what we're doing. Ben has taken it to a new level with the development of our young talent, and how he goes about that, it's spot on. Because bringing in that young, you know what happened when we looked at our revenue at our sales meetings that we have annually, every time we would bring in 2 producers, guess what happened to the volume? And we tracked it, how many years, Ben? Ever since 15, 20 years? And it was consistent in growth. And that's even in the down markets, in the tough times that you talked about a little bit earlier. That's how important young talent is to the growth of your organization if you want to grow and expand. Ben, you want to talk to that? I don't mean to.
I'd like to keep as much top secret, please.
Let's turn to another little subject we can dwell on, and I'll open this up to anybody that you decide. What has surprised you the most, good or bad, about working with your son or daughter?
I'll start. Again, having never envisioned that my daughter would ever have any interest to come in, because again, the perception in the industry is such of kind of a male dominancy, you know, that you see, that it was exciting that when she started talking about this, and people would come to me and say, well, is she really serious about this? And I said, you know, she's the one making that decision. I'm not making that decision. But I think it has really changed the whole perspective of the agency as she has come in and brought a different perspective of the way we viewed things, not only in our staffing management style, but in our relationship with our clients. And then going back to what Don was saying earlier, our relationship with our carriers, because that is so important. And I think that's been exciting for us.
I can add to that as well. And that's the marketing coming out in me, that I so much value the relationship piece of this, both on the client side and on the carrier side. And I don't think I would have really appreciated or really understood that as fully as I do if I hadn't spent some time on the carrier side first to understand how important it is, especially for the agency-carrier relationship. And sitting in the shoes of as an underwriter for 2 years, it was incredibly telling to me to see the agents that made more of the effort to really, truly develop a relationship and not just need a quote as quickly as possible, you know, and would call and talk even when they didn't necessarily need something. And so as I've transitioned onto the agency side, that's been a huge focus of mine, is really getting to know our carriers and our underwriters and our marketing reps, and seeing some of them out here today is really exciting. And so for me, I know that without our carriers, we are, you know, powerless. And so he's always done that my whole life, and I've known that, and I've heard all of our carriers' names, and our underwriters' names, and some of them we still work with today. And so that's exactly where I wanted to pick up and really focus on developing those relationships.
Bill, if I could comment on, and I agree with exactly what you're talking about in relationships with the underwriters, your carriers. Today, that is probably one of the most critical issues that you have in your agencies. Because if you don't have the relationship when the company changes, you have a problem. And today, companies change like the wind. If you look around, some of you older folks, and look around at all the carriers that are no longer in business. You look at St. Paul, yeah, they merged. You look at Royal, I don't know where they are. Connecticut General, Reliance, those companies are gone. And when you have a relationship with a company like that and where it goes, now you need to develop another relationship of where it went to. And that relationship may be totally different. Look how the Hartford, look at the Aetna. They're non-existent as far as what they used to be. So if you had a book of business, a personal lines book of business with the Aetna that you developed over the years, all of a sudden they disappeared. And it's really troubling. Insurance carriers scare me, to be honest with you, because they have become actuarial monsters. Any actuaries in here? None. Good, then I can say what I'm going to say. Actuaries wear their shoes backwards. They think back and they develop everything from a backward look, and then they leap it forward, and sometimes it doesn't work. And that's what got a lot of these carriers in trouble in the first place. So then their management, shareholders demanded them they sell, and they're gone. So the relationships with these carriers are really important, so you know where they're going and how you're going to deal with it. Brad has that problem. He understands that, and it has impacted his agency. It'll probably impact yours, and it's very, very important to deal with, to think forward ahead of them, so you know that you can plan your model.
Any more surprises that you didn't, when you got really working together, that changed?
I mean, I would, you know, the surprise, or maybe it wasn't, I didn't anticipate it being any issue, but we've always had fun. The insurance grind, you'd still, pull in the parking lot every day, and if I'd see his car, I'm like, oh, good, he made it through another night. So, most days when he pulls in and sees my car, he usually stops by my office first and then goes up the hallway. And if you're not going to have fun with the family transition, or hoping that the people that do buy you within your agency, well, then you probably should sell to an outside firm. You can't be an antagonist for the buyer, whether, again, it's your family or employees. You got to be the biggest cheerleader in the world then, because you want them to succeed. They want you to have a happy retirement. And I can say, we're still having fun. I think maybe that's why he comes in. I don't know.
So I'm going to ask, what do you think, I'm going to ask this to William. What do you think is the biggest surprise you about working with me?
Oh, gosh. So many surprises. I didn't know how dark your closet really was until we started working this closely. No, I would say that you've always supported everything, and I think one of the biggest shockers for me has just been how hard it's been, not really hard, but how the transition has affected our team members and our employees. and never wanting them to put them in a bad situation where they have to choose or get caught in the middle of anything. I will say, you know, I've maybe seen one pom-pom, but definitely not both pom-poms from you as a cheerleader, and you're for sure not doing stunts or throwing anyone up in the air and catching them yet, so that would be nice. But no, it's been an amazing thing. It's been very fascinating. I would say the one thing that I would probably change after just looking at that, it would probably be shorter than 2 years. I think 2 years is too long of a formal deal. It would probably be shorter than that, what we have right now.
That's fair enough. That's fair enough. Okay, let's turn to a question a little bit like that. When you look at the relationship with your son and daughter and over the years, what are the most important changes that they wanted to make in the organization or asked you to make in how the agency was run or how the business was run?
You want me to start off with that?
Sure, yeah.
Well, I mentioned the first thing was automation. Ben took the lead on that. Of course, I was involved with AMS, constantly went to their meetings, but he took over that responsibility. And if you were to look at my desk and his desk, before we relocated, one of the most painful things that I had to do was get rid of paper that I'd accumulated over the years. And I'm now downsized, and I have a clean desk now. A few little organized stacks. But he took the bull by the horns, and he committed the agency to going paperless across the board. That was huge, phenomenal in efficiency. How many of you remember when you'd had the letter files in the filing cabinet and it would be misfiled and you're trying to find the file to answer the? How many of you remember that? Well, that's a thing of the past. It's countless, the number of things that he took the lead on, and the young management team. Ben, you want to talk about how you delegated to some of the other partners? And I know y'all did. You already mentioned it. You already do that. And the expertise to giving them various projects and things to be in charge of?
Well, I'll just speak in a broader sense. I came in and had a bit of an operational focus, or perspective, I guess is a better way to put it, in addition to producing and building a book of business, in helping the agency define processes and just do things more efficiently. But everybody has a talent, everybody has a weakness, and so it's just helping each person understand where their weaknesses and their strengths are. I can tell you on a sheet of paper as far as what my weaknesses are. I'm really good at telling you what my weaknesses are. Most importantly, and I should say it like this, when I interview people, I always ask what their strengths are and their weaknesses are. I really care less about what their strengths are. What I really want to know is what their weaknesses are and how they overcome them. And so that's really how we've applied it to our management, is what are our weaknesses and how can we utilize what is other people's strengths to offset weaknesses to make the firm better. And that really is in a broader sense as far as what we've done, organizationally speaking.
Don, did you? Yes.
Oh, no, I would just say, too, I think that's an important deal, the technology. So how has really technology changed currently, and do you think is going to change this business and how an agency operates going forward as well?
Let me address that a little bit.
Yeah.
When I went in with my dad, of course, I came straight out of, I had 3 years with AMS. So I went there before I went in the agency. And so my perception of technology versus his perception, I mean, there was quite a bit of difference. And so I thought, well, surely when Cambridge comes in here, there's not going to be much difference, you know, because we're on the same level. But we were very quick to see that we made some dramatic changes from a marketing perspective, from the technology, the updates that had taken place. And so that has really been our focus is, you know, what is our client looking for today? How do they want to do business with us? And that's what we're trying to figure out, is how do we reach them in a more effective mannerism. And the same way with our carriers. How do they want to communicate with us? And so that's kind of the issue that Cambridge has taken on and made some significant changes. And I will say that while we all, you know, are sitting there saying change is tough, we don't really want to do that, it's mandatory. If we're going to survive, we've got to change, and both on our client side as well as on our carrier side and on our staff side. We've had to make different adjustments within our staff of how we're going to do business with our staff. So I think that's one of the most exciting things that we've seen in the last couple of years are the changes in how we're going to perceive, how the public is going to perceive us in making those changes.
Thoughts on that?
Sure. So I'm a huge advocate of meeting our client where they want to be met. And when I think of it from my perspective of how, if I were sitting in my customer's shoes, how would I want to be treated? How would I want to do business? And some of those thought processes are what have driven, like he was saying, some of the changes that we have made in the agency, being more efficient, kind of what Ben was saying, and from an operational standpoint for our staff, making it more efficient from a workflow standpoint, but then on the other side for our client, ease of doing business. And moving forward as technology continues to be such a driver of the changes that are taking place in the industry, it's incredibly important that we do make those changes as they do come up. And but I don't remember if it was Dr. Holt or Thrasher earlier talking about how, but no technology can ever overcome what the integrity and the relationships and the trust. So although we do put a huge emphasis on the technology, we also realize that that's just a tool that we use to maintain the relationships, which continues to be the biggest piece.
I'll add one thing, and that is the area where I feel probably least qualified and Ryan most qualified is in the technology as it applied to the sales process. The whole issue of prospecting, pipeline building, the Salesforce empowerment type platform is frankly not the way I started and executed my business. And it's hard for me to buy into, but I see it succeeding for large numbers of folks in our firm.
That's true.
And I mean, it is the key, I think, to building business particularly in an urban environment. There's just no doubt about it. It's not something I'm as comfortable with as he is leading.
I've got just a quick question too. What would you all say your mindset is when it comes to technology? Is it fearful? Is it worried? Is it concerned? And then contrast with your mindset on technology. Is it a similar descriptors? Whoever wants to start. Ralph, you want to start?
I'll
Go for it, sure.
No, what concerns me, and these are, William, we go back and forth on this, and in terms of most of the technology, William has been right. My concern is that when we devote so much effort to technology and we automate, that's an old word, but we, digitize all these things, we're going to make mistakes. And we're going to foul up some people in the process. And we talked to our IT people, and we have a pretty big group of people, and they said, well, I don't know why you're so upset about this. It only was 1% of the people that got hit by this issue. And my approach is not maybe the best one. I said, but it may be 1% to us, but it's 100% to that person. We make a mistake concerning you or something that we're doing with you, it's a 100% mistake. It may be small for us. And that's what concerns me. And William tells me, he says, you're upset about this is wrong to be upset. He says, we're going to make mistakes. Those are going to happen. And when you're dealing with the numbers we deal with, but still is a bothersome, very bothersome thing to me. And I've got to learn how to accept that a little bit better, but we don't want to make mistakes. So you have to sort of bend a little bit. We don't accept them, but maybe they are inevitable. But William has been very big on that. He takes the mistakes a lot better than I do. Another thing that he has brought to us, of course, with the technology, we've gotten rid of so much paper. Betty, we've taken 20 years off of Betty's life. Betty loves paper. We have eliminated so much paper, we took all that room and we made 3 meeting rooms out of the space. And we never realized we had that much space because we had so many rooms with file cabinets and files and records. Because when you called us about your grade or your exam 4 or 5 years ago or something on your record. We wanted to be sure we had it. So I think we made some strides in that. The other thing that took me off base was William comes into my office. He says, we're going to tear out all these offices. I said, wait a minute. We built all these offices. We put windows in them. We put doors in them. We want to give people privacy. No. We're tearing the whole damn thing out, and we're going to put cubicles in. I've worked all my life to get out of a cubicle. Get the hell out of a cubicle. But now we have all these cubicles, and they're nice, and William has taken a leadership role. He's in one of them.
I'm in a cubicle.
Danielle's in a cubicle. I'm sealed. I've got my doors sealed. I'm keeping my office.
We have a cubicle ready for you. It's just going to happen next year.
Yeah, Lloyd's box.
The Lloyd's box.
That's a cubicle.
It is a cubicle.
I guess
Thank
it
you,
is.
Don.
There you go. Anyway, I just was wondering how many, that seems to be sweeping the country and has for years. Get rid of the offices, put in the cubicles. Who has done that in this room? Taken offices out a lot of people.
I hate to interrupt it,
Not interrupting.
but we went the other way. We had been cubicles for 30 years, and people hated them. And so we went through, our building was 50 years old or something like that.
You installed them, didn't you?
Yeah. We did, I did. My dad didn't want them, but we got the cubicles. And so now we're back to, guess what? We're back to offices. So we have every person, every single person in the office has a private office with a window and a door. And that was one of the deals that we went to the staff. We said, we're going to do a major remodel process. What's most important to you?
Mm-hmm.
How do you feel about this? And so we looked at that for about 2 years, and we came up with this concept. And so we've gone back to the office.
Well,
That's great.
but we have created a lot of space doing that, and people seem to be relatively happy with that. And
Well, you might want to ask Brad this, but when Brad assumed the responsibility of management, he built bigger cubicles, not smaller. It's like a prison in there now. But it's very attractive, and it has. He wanted to cut down on the noise in the office because this was an open concept. But all the employees that worked in the service, they all had windows. The producers, they didn't get windows. They had windows in their private offices. But he cleaned the whole place up. He said it was ugly, which it wasn't. But he said it was ugly. So we have new cubicles. They're higher, they're more private, but they're still cubicles. If you put bars in front of them, they would be a prison cell. But they're very nice, and he'll laugh about that. But he really cleaned the place up, and it made a more family atmosphere and attractive for our employees. There's no one comes in that office without a wow. This is great. No one. And he's done a great job with that. But I'd still have the old purple stuff that's in there, but that's gone.
Well, we cleaned the whole office up except his office. His has not been touched in 28 years. He won't let us. He's like, I'm not going away. I can't have it done. So,
That's correct.
Technology is probably the biggest disruptor in anyone's office. With the proper training and the rollout, you've got to upgrade. And we've always done that. It takes a while. And you've got to have the employees buy in, as always. We renovated the office. We made the cubes a little bit higher to cut down on the noise. But then we put in the LED lights to brighten the place up. We've got some salesmen that are remote. It's been working. That's getting out of the norm. We haven't gone to a WeWork type of concept yet, but that's with the management team. We're talking about that for even more remote So those are probably the biggest changes that we've got going on.
Any other thoughts, comments? You guys just got into a new space, right? Or
We
not
did.
too long? Yeah.
And the only thing that I was going to add is that over the last few years, it has been one of my focuses from a technology standpoint for us to become a cloud-based business.
Mm-hmm.
So the tornado that came through 2 nights ago, I was very concerned because its path was maybe 2 miles south of here, and our tower is right across the highway. And so from a disaster recovery standpoint, being a cloud-based business is a big deal. And that had always been a perspective of mine as far as the utilization of technology. And so that's been my most recent technology focus. Phone systems cloud-based, Exchange servers cloud-based. Really, we only have one server that we use for document management, but beyond that, everything is cloud-based. And so internet is our most important technology in the speed of internet. But that one became very real Sunday evening because I wasn't sure if we were going to have a building with a bunch of glass blown out and what we were going to come back to. And so technology from an operational standpoint, then of course the sales component as well is huge and has been the biggest driver of what we've been able to accomplish over the last, 23 years.
Any further comments on it, the changes?
I'll ask a question. Does anyone think that the technology expansion has taken the personal touch out of insurance? Or has it not?
How many people think it has? Okay. Minority.
What effect does that have on your ability to sell and retain business? That, to me, that's troubling. If you have a large personal book of business, people today, you have lost personal touch with them with a lot of the communications with technology. In the commercial arena, I think you still need the personal touch, and you can solve processing with the technology quickly. But the personal touch is there, particularly with claims. People want to know. And I think there's a balance there that needs to be addressed.
Can I add something to this?
Please.
You want to be in touch with your clients? Put life into your agency. Put benefits. Because guess what? How many times does your customer hear from you? A billing, an invoice, maybe a late notice. But you know what? When you enter the picture with life insurance and benefits, you really get to know your clients. And guess what? They'll call you to get a hold of the right person in the commercial side of the house or personal line side of the house, because guess what? I'm talking to them all the time. Don't ever underestimate, and you've already said it, Don, 40% of your revenue comes from benefit. Is there any reason they're at 40%? What do you think that does to the revenue stream? In good times and bad. Tell me the last time you've seen a rate decrease on benefits in major medical. It's going up. So the downturns of the economy, you put life into your agency, you'd be absolutely taken back how it changes and it helps retention of both the commercial side and the personal line side. Those of you that were in the session yesterday talking about Social Security and Medicare, how many are turning 65 a day? Do any of you remember the number? 10,000 a day. How many of you can handle 10,000 prospects? Don't underestimate the value of benefits. That's what I do. That's my passion. I'm a hybrid. I came out of the property and casualty side, but I learned benefits all along the way because I saw how important it was in maintaining the very thing that you just mentioned. Because guess what? Going on direct bill, all the companies want direct bill. And I understand that. But you got to find another way to have contact with those customers because of the very thing that he brought up on the retention side.
Okay, let's switch gears just a little bit. Do you have any further comments on that issue? Okay, we all are concerned about younger people, new employees, how people react, what they want to be treated differently, et cetera. And overall, they've been sort of subdivided people into three groups these days. One group of people work to live. Another group of people live to work. And a third group of people live to live. So we're going to ask each of you, and we can start with William's group, what best describes your father? Work to live to work, or live to live?
Well, I think it's obviously, it started out, he lived to work. Now he works to live. I don't think he lives to live. I don't know. Live to live is kind of a tough statement.
Well, he sort of just started hanging in.
No, he works so that he can come into the office and has a purpose, and he enjoys talking to his clients, the staff. When you get to 80 plus, your friends start to
die off.
They do, or they retire to somewhere else, and you don't catch up with them as much.
Well, it's hard. It's crippled up. It's hard to catch them now.
Right. So.
Can I respond?
Not right now, no. Go ahead. You want me to repeat the three categories?
I think I got it.
Okay, good, okay.
So I think the best way for me to describe it is for him, he works and loves to live, work, and love. He truly is a combination of all three. He is so passionate about what we do and serving our clients and building this agency. And it has been incredibly special to me to be able to see him be so passionate about it and absolutely love what he does. And I think the best way to put it is he found something that he loves to do, that it'd get him out of bed to get up and go do something he loves so much he'd do it for free. Maybe not for free, but it truly is that it's that passion. And obviously with that passion comes the lifestyle and comes, to provide for his family and for me to be able to live the life that I have growing up. He didn't miss a thing. And I think that comes with the work-life balance that this industry does provide. You can make a lot of money, you can do a lot of good for a lot of people, but still have your personal life. And so I would say he's a combination of all of it.
That's a good answer.
Work to live. If I've heard batteries recharged once, I've heard it 10,000 times. The importance of getting away and enjoying the fruits of your labor. The one thing that I will also share that Ron has imparted to me is that money should not define you, but it certainly dictates the things that you can do for your family, the education that your family is able to get, where you live, and the things that you get to enjoy. And so, work to live.
Go ahead, Ralph. Here we go. We only have a few moments left. So.
Well, I need more than that.
I know that. That's on warning you.
However,
having said
what
that.
Brad said is somewhat distorted, backwards. It's correct, but I think all three of those is like evolution. When you're young, you will work to live, because you have to. You've got to work to make a living so you can live. I think you get caught up in that and you work to live. It's natural. When you get to a certain point in your life, you then live to work because you get trapped in it. You're so used to working to live that now you become so engaged in working that it's living to work. I got caught in that. I lived to work. And then you realize after you get rid of the business, some of it, and then let him do the work, which he does very well, and then you get to the point of live to live. I think it's an evolutionary thing. And you may not agree with me, but you go through those phases, and I'm now in the live to live. I don't need to work. I don't have to. I got more money I can ever spend. I shouldn't say that, but they'll find a way to spend it. Don't worry about that. But I don't need that. But I can live to live now, and I think it's evolutionary. I don't know what you think, but you're going to go through those phases if you start out in the business from a very young position and you move through the phases of life. So, there you have it.
I agree with you, Ralph.
Really
I may not be in that stage, but I would say that I think work to live and live to work both are interchangeable. And if you don't enjoy what you do, you shouldn't be there doing it, whether that's in your personal life or in your business life. But I think it's so critical for us to enjoy life and appreciate every day that we have here on earth. And so consequently, you work hard and you play hard, and that's the way I was raised, and that's kind of my philosophy of never let up, either one. Give them 100%. So,
Don?
So I'm going to agree with the panelists. I think it is an evolutionary process. Brad and Ralph both commented on that. I will say this. Yesterday morning, when we're 8 blocks south of where our son's home is, his street was decimated. It looked like a disaster zone. Houses with roofs off. I mean, ours was barely touched. But I walked in to his home, and the first thing that was said was, "It's what we're in business for." I mean, yeah, he's working to live, but all of a sudden, the reality of what we are in a position to provide, and that is preserve assets and save lives, became real. And so I would say, in time, he'll work toward, and I feel like I'm in a situation where I'm now more live to live, or to some extent live to work. Depends on the appointment the next day, to be honest with you as well. But it is an evolutionary process, and I think you pass through it in this business.
I regret that Ryan's not here. I would have loved to have heard his perspective on all the transition. I've watched him grow up. He and Ben started out in the industry almost about the same time. And everybody missed a real treat for not being able to hear his perspective. And hopefully sometime in the future, that will be made possible after he gets through this ordeal. I agree with everything that's been said, the transition, evolution, on all the things that have been said. The thing that I've stressed always to our young producers, keep your life in balance. Invest as much in your home life, in your marriage, as you do your business and your profession. I have seen those producers that have lost their families because guess what they did? They invested 100% of their time into their work and at the sacrifice of their family and children. There's nothing more sad than that. And guess what happens? In Texas, community property state, the attorney wants half of that book of business. So all of a sudden, the producer is faced with having to buy back the business that he or she produced. So take heed to that. And let me close with one thing. I'm not going to read the whole verse, but there's something I carry in my pocket that I refer to from time to time. Ecclesiastes, the 5th chapter. I won't read it all. For moreover, when God gives any man wealth and possessions and enables him to enjoy them, to accept his lot and be happy in his work, this is a gift of God. He seldom reflects on the days of his life because God keeps him occupied with gladness of heart. That's what family is. And the things that I told Ben, money's not everything, but it sure helps and goes a long way. And Don expressed it extremely well as he told you the story of his son and family. The most important thing was to know that he and his family were okay. And they made it through. And fortunately, but that's the business that we're in. And I guarantee you, Ryan will be able to tell his story like never before in the future. And he will be sensitive to those customers who go through a tragedy, because guess what? He saw his neighbors and what they're going through right now.
Thank you. Well said. Thank you. Do we have any questions in the last couple of minutes? Anybody wants? I know it's if you're out there, and we've been out there, you want to kill the person that asks the question at the end, right? Shut up. We want to take a
Let me
break.
add
Yeah,
one
please
thing
do.
to this gentleman asked about hiring producers, and basically, one of the reasons why our business over a 20-year period really grew on the benefits side was we found benefits producers much easier to find and hire well-trained. The property casualty piece, Cambridge, at one time, insurance carriers were doing a good job of training people who could move into an agency environment. That's been really tough for us. We don't do well training property casualty producers from ground up. So our biggest successes have come respecting covenants not to compete. We respect them and we don't interlope. But finding people with books of business on the property casualty side has really been important to us. On the benefit side, finding group reps who we get to go into the field with and watch them with our clients on occasion, it's just been a much different ball game for us, and frankly, that's one of the reasons why our business has grown on the benefit side significantly. I hope that helped answer the question that you asked, because I felt like we sort of left it hanging.
We have one other question.
Yes, please. Yeah.
Hi. During the transition, and also just during normal ongoing operations, how do you attract and retain good support staff, service people who cross-sell, keep that relationship going with the client on a day-to-day basis? Sales is important, but retention, it many times comes from the support staff. So how do each of you, or how if anyone wants to address that, how do you address that?
The question is, how do you retain those people during transitions? I mean,
Well, how do you attract and retain good support staff,
Okay.
and pass on their knowledge to the next generation? Maybe do you pair a new producer with an experienced service member? Okay. What is your strategy there?
Well, I mean, I think it all depends on if you're rural, urban, or suburban, or in the city, what type of talent might be available. In the Northeast, the younger generations, they want to be in downtown Philadelphia. And I don't blame them. It's vibrant, there's things going on, cost of living's modest, but the traffic is brutal. So you have to nurture and keep what you have, and hope that at 35 some younger people start moving out to the suburbs when they realize they want to have maybe a family or room for their dogs. So I don't know if there's a blueprint to do that. Maybe you guys know, but that process just is ever changing.
Our biggest success has been really with internships and Project Invest students.
Yeah.
With some training where we can form their habits within the firm.
How far are you from downtown Dallas, where maybe the younger, or maybe it's not as important to be right in the hub?
We're close.
20 minutes?
We're at Walnut Hill and Central, so we're not far. The biggest challenge, frankly, is competition.
Mm-hmm.
Finding really good people who have the potential to excel in staff positions
Yeah.
in our region is tough.
I would add to that just that our strategy is organic and to place as many people in entry-level positions and then to surround them with our people and help them develop, which also lends itself to the importance of the National Alliance. To Don's point, that's when competition does get in. You get a reputation for doing something well and people will try to pick you off. And so it's just the reality of what things are, but then you've got other little games that you can play. Not games, but just the art of the business where you bring a lot of pride to the organization. You make it a place where people want to work. Hopefully makes it a place that people don't want to leave. But you find those ways of being organic to help people grow in the business and see where they are as a place of pride and want to have a long-term career, which becomes the art of the business.
Okay, with that, if there are no further questions, we need to bring this session to an end. It's been a great session.